you're saying like you've obviously seen this because you didn't grow up that way.
No, I
Not
grew
at
up.
all.
I was the poor kid that grew up in a rural part of Pennsylvania that believed we were all going to come together and do the right thing because it was the right thing.
Oh, you did believe that?
I did believe that. Yeah, that's how I grew up, and I believe that. That's what took me into the military. And then when the military was disappointing to me, all those times where I did the right thing, but it still was somehow the wrong thing to do. Right?
Do you have an example of that?
Yeah. So I went to the Air Force Academy.
Yep.
And I was there's two ways to get to the Air Force. There's two ways to get into a military academy. The first way is you meet all the requirements right out of high school and you go right into your freshman year. The other way is you miss some of those requirements, but you still are a good candidate. So they send you to something called the military prep school, which is a 1-year preparatory school so that you can get yourself up to those requirements before you go into the mainstream academy. So I went to the Air Force Academy prep school because I did not have all the requirements I needed when I graduated high school. So during that year, I took it very seriously because I was like, this is my chance to like go to a great school and get out of Pennsylvania and all this other stuff. I did my best with my grades. I did my best to keep myself military disciplined and physically active and all the stuff that I had to do. And I was doing great. I made it to the place where by the end of my time at the prep school, I was the second in command of the prep school because it's student led, right? So of the, whatever it was, 400 students there, I was second in command of all of them. And then finals week came. And during finals week, I walked into my dorm room. I was doing a bunch of stuff that I had to do as the second in command of the school, administrative stuff. And I walk into my dorm room and I see my roommate is drinking underage with like 3 or 4 other friends in the dorm room at the prep school on a military base during finals week. What do you think is the military school's policy on underage drinking in the dorm room?
I'm going to say you're not allowed to do that.
Zero tolerance. Zero tolerance. So we are all told, we're told and we're trained, and everything you read and everything you sign says as soon as you see it.
Did you narc on him?
That's exactly what I did. Guess what? It was the right thing that got me in all kinds of trouble.
Oh, it got you in trouble?
Got me in tons of trouble.
For narking on him?
Yep, because I went...
Serves you right.
So this is...
with you.
No, dude, you're fucking with me, but it's laughable to you.
Yeah.
Because you were not conditioned like I was conditioned. Right? To me, this was a clear-cut, simple thing. They're drinking underage in the dorm room. Everything that I've been trained at in the year before this event happened, because remember, I've been in the military academy for a year now, right? Plus getting through high school and everything else, my church background, blah, 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 all that stuff together. I was like, oh, this is very clearly, they are making a bad decision because of whatever reason, right? But my obligation, my moral obligation here is to turn them in. So I did exactly what my moral obligation told me to do. I went, I pulled my roommate out first, right? Hey, can I talk to you for a second in the hallway? In the hallway. Hey, you're breaking the rules. This is something we can't do. I am the number 2 cadet in charge of the entire school right now, right? I don't really want to have to turn you in. What I would much prefer is if you can't close this party down, get rid of the liquor, and then go tell like the officer in command that weekend. Just go tell them what happened. You self-report, then we're good to go. I've done my obligation because I've told you to self-report. You've done your obligation because you have self-reported, and nobody else in the room gets in trouble because you self-reported, right? You know what my roommate said to that?
Go fuck yourself.
What are you gonna do? You gonna narc on us? You gonna turn us in? I was like, dude, I don't want to, but this is what I have to do. So as if that wasn't awkward enough to find them, and then that wasn't awkward enough to have that conversation and get shot down by my roommate, then I go talk to the fucking officer in charge. And when I sit in the room with the officer in charge, I'm like, hey, this is what I just saw. That dude looks at me and he's like, you're turning in your roommate? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, this is what I'm supposed to do. He's like, dude, haven't you ever heard of like loyalty and cooperate to graduate? And I'm like, yeah, I've heard of all those things, but like, this is what you guys told us to do. And he's like, well, now that you've reported it to me, I have to do something with it, right? Again, making it my fault. Now that you've told me, I have to do something with this. So here's how it's going to work. You can go back to your roommate and you can tell him to self-report. And if he self-reports, then, he gets to stay, you get to stay, but everybody who was drinking with him and didn't self-report has to leave. Like finals week, they're gone. He's like, or if he doesn't self-report, he leaves, but the people that he covers for stays. And I'm like, this is bullshit. Go back to my roommate. I lay it out for him. And he says the same thing. He's like, fuck you, Andy. This is bullshit. And I'm like, well, I've done everything I can do. I am very confused right now by a zero tolerance policy that clearly has tolerance and that somehow I'm the villain in all this. But I'm going to try to figure this out on my own. So the way that ended, he never turned himself in. He got kicked out of the Air Force Academy prep school the week of finals. The 5 or 6 other people drinking with him were never turned in. They graduated. They went on to then continue at the Air Force Academy. I have no idea what happened to him. And I kind of carried that scarlet letter for the entire 4 years I was at the Air Force Academy. Everybody knew me as the guy that turned in my roommate. And of course, I had 6 other guys who were more than happy to share that story with everybody about how I turned in my roommate. So that's some bullshit, dude. And that's what I'm talking about. We don't actually know how shit works. People lie to us, we believe it, and we shouldn't.
Do you think that, like, I've never really talked with you in depth about your childhood or anything, but that's something I talk with a lot of guests about because, as you laid out a few minutes ago, people's environments determine who they are, and they shape them. And there's people who can kind of be an outlier from environments, for sure, but more often than not, surroundings equal where you end up. And you obviously, we know where you ended up, and you got yourself in these situations where you became a successful guy in the government and worked in some pretty wild places. But, you know, to get to that point where you're just in prep school at this point, you're on the right path, but like you already had something in you that matches what I see today in the sense that like you're a very analytical guy, extremely analytical. And when I was listening to you tell that story, I'm not sure how Alessi here felt hearing it, but all I could think about was you were looking at this situation as a 0 or a 1. So the rule says this, therefore that is how we have to proceed, like very military kind of based. And yet you started off that whole story by saying that part of what molded you to realize that people suck, and you're insinuating here, correct me if I'm wrong, like you don't necessarily follow some rules, is the fact that when I did it, I was told to go fuck myself. That's I'm saying a lot right now, but like between your analytical nature that has remained with you through all this, and then your attitude of kind of like, you know what, throw up the middle fingers, fuck the police, let's go do my goddamn thing, you know, something there to me doesn't line up, and I would think that it has to do with things that occurred in your childhood.
This is what's happening is exactly what we talked about with Peter Zeihan's 10 to 15 year theory, right? There's a cone of uncertainty, and that's you're admitting that there's this uncertainty that you don't understand, and you're wondering where it's coming from. It's pretty simple, right? I was conditioned to believe that if I did what I was told and I met the expectation, I would have success. That's how my mom raised me. That's how my dad raised me. That's how the public school system raised me. That's how I got accepted to the Air Force Academy prep school. That's how I got to the second in command of the school, by meeting the expectation that was set in front of me. And then at this scenario, the expectation was actually not the same as what was set. Do you want to know what goes through someone's brain whenever they decide to make a decision? They go, like when someone is following a rule, there's a certain process that their brain is going through. First, there's the rule. They understand that there's the rule. They understand the rule clearly. There's no questions about the rule. But then they also think the rule came from somewhere. And the rule did not come arbitrarily. Somebody thought of the rule. Yeah. Some other people sat around and discussed the rule. Multiple people all agreed that this needs to be the rule. Perhaps even somebody else didn't follow the rule and something bad happened, and therefore this rule is now codified in a rule book. Right? That's when people follow rules, that's what they believe. What I'm saying is that experience taught me that that's not how it works. That there are some rules that are put in place just because people are too fucking batshit like cowardly to stand up and change the rule. That maybe instead of a 0 tolerance policy, it would have taken just some colonel or some captain or even a panel of colonels or captains to stand up to the general and say, you know what, general, maybe we should make it so that everybody's allowed to get caught drinking once. But those fucking pussy captains and colonels never said what they really thought. So that's why when I went to a captain and followed the rule, he was like, you're the asshole. And now, because of your decision to follow the rules, you put me in this awkward predicament because now I have to explain to my colonels above me why I have to do all this bullshit, and this is going to make a big stink on the record. Like, we are fundamentally, this is what the agency showed me. This is what the experience that I had when I turned in my roommate, not realizing that it was the wrong thing. The experience there was it planted a seed, and that seed suggested to me that maybe all this time that I've thought that authority really is fake, maybe it really is.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. Please hit that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.